Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Oh, for God's sake. I'm sorry. I forgot to unmute myself. You should have heard what I've been saying. God dang it. Okay, starting over. How you doing? Hi. Talking about the weather because that's what everybody's talking about. And I was just trying to point out that it was a lot hotter than it is this week. Over 100 years ago in Pittsburgh, when in August of 1918, the official temperature reading was 103.2 degrees. 103.2 degrees. And that on the authority of Pittsburgh's chief forecaster, who knew we don't have one anymore. But back in the day, the city employed a chief forecaster who sat somewhere atop the Oliver building downtown and made his prognostications. His name was Henry Pennywit. I love that name. It's Dickensian. Henry Pennywit. I'm getting, by the way, all this information from Virginia Montanez's delightful Substack. She's just a fount of wondrous anecdotes and historical anecdotes about Pittsburgh. And so it was, yeah, 103.2, which would make us all feel a lot cooler, since in many respects all this stuff is relative, right? Anyway, Pennywit was very well known, and people blamed him for the bad weather. It was always his fault, since he seems to be in charge of it. And the newspapers would jump on him, and Pennywit was, well known, but not necessarily well loved, because I guess, sort of like weather forecasters today, he, for some reason, was held responsible for something that he really had no ability to change or alter. He was constantly trying to tell people, I don't make up the weather. I don't control the weather, Pennywit said, despite the fact that he kept being accused of it. And Virginia finds some city newspapers. This one from 1908. Forecaster Pennywit, after forcing several days of summer weather into the face of winter, is rudely knocked off his perch. Just this sense of people reading the papers got a sense that Pennywit was in charge. So the day after the 103-degree reading, the Pittsburgh Post printed this poem directed at Pennywit. Oh, Pennywit, Chief Pennywit, why all this hot humidity? Why did you take a frenzied fit and turn on this torridity? Pray turn it off a little bit and give us some frigidity. That in the Pittsburgh Post, which no longer exists. So there you have it. So it's cool in comparison. But speaking of a Pittsburgh weather forecaster, which we don't have anymore, the most unbelievable stories I have seen of late, which of course I cannot find, is, let me hang on a minute. Is the fact that, forgive me here, Pittsburgh has in its employ one plumber. One plumber for the entire city. And you know what that one plumber is supposed to do? Turn on all of the 200 plus fountains the city has. Keep open the swimming pools. So this one guy, I'm serious, I don't have his name here, the poor soul. He is responsible for turning on every single one of the city's fountains, some of which apparently have been jerry-rigged so that he's the only person who knows how to do it. Others require parts being stored for the winter, and he's the only guy who knows where they are and how to put them back. He also has to fill all of the city pools and manage any plumbing issues that might come up. And he also has to take care of, and I don't even know where these are, the city's public toilet facilities. Well, it's just unbelievable. apparently the city's budget calls for 3 plumbers, which also doesn't seem like enough. But 2 of those positions have been empty for some time because I guess the city doesn't pay plumbers what they can make in the private sector. Anybody who's had a plumber over to the house can understand that. So I was just blown away by the fact that I guess a lot of complaints have been coming in because the fountains, people are sweltering. Kids want to go to playgrounds and play with in the fountains and stuff. And this poor guy, can't do it all. Um, One lonely plumber. Surely the local TV stations have taken even more of his time by doing a story on him. So, yeah, okay. Um, anyway, sorry. I'm just sorry in general. I beg your forgiveness for my, just stupid beginning of this program, which is to say, with my mic muted. But here we are. By the way, Pittsburgh's trouble with getting its fountains and pools up and running is they're not alone in this incredible heat wave. Imagine being in New York City, for instance, and public pools in New York City don't open until June 27, which is a week away. And I just can't imagine. The city's got 53 of them, outdoor pools, and they're free and they're filled, but they're empty. Milton writes, see, here you go. The city's budget calls for 3 plumbers, right, which they don't have, at $30 per hour. And then he says, for the first 2 years of his apprenticeship, my nephew made $42 an hour. That was in his apprenticeship? He made 42. The city's offering 30. Not certified plumber would maybe consider $30 an hour. Well, one wonders about the sole plumber we have if he's content to stay burdened as he is by so much to do when he could be making obviously a lot more outside of the city's employ. So there's no way they're going to fill those 2 jobs unless, as Milton suggests, that they get somebody who's not essentially qualified or uncertified, whatever that means. It could be. I'm sure some uncertified plumbers are good at the job, but I would think that the city would only hire certified. God almighty. Okay, what else we got? Oh, a funny thing. Um, okay. Oh, Milton's right. Milton, as usual, honest to Pete, as usual. He's suggesting, and you're right, that the city plumber, this beleaguered, overworked soul, is more than happy to be overworked at $30 per hour because he ends up having to work a lot of overtime. And if it's time and a half, well, then he's up to $45 an hour. So yeah, he probably is making good money. Oh Lord. So what we got here? The Supreme Court's supposed to come out with some. Of course, they were supposed to do that last Thursday, and they didn't. I mentioned the other day that this is historically one of the laziest, underperforming courts. I guess they're too busy. I don't know, hanging flags, helping insurrections, and taking luxury trips that they don't pay for, but we pay for, essentially, in having a corrupted court. Dear God. So that's not what I was going to tell you about. I was thinking about, I think yesterday, I spoke of, in regard to Juneteenth, how we don't really celebrate the real history because the real history is nothing much to celebrate. That we can say the slaves were emancipated on this date. But dig a little deeper and you find that, well, I know it says that on that paper, but it's not what happened. The white folks just figured out other ways. Oh, the court came down with something. The Supreme Court upholds a Trump-era tax provision. Yes. Oh, God. This they have time for. It upheld a tax on foreign income that helped finance the tax cuts that Trump imposed in 2017 in a case that experts had cautioned could undercut the nation's tax system. Okay, so this actually ends up being, the vote was 7-2. Justice Kavanaugh writing the majority opinion, joined by the Chief Justice and the court's 3 liberals. I'm not going to get into it. It's not the one we want to hear. Actually, as long as we're with the court, let me interrupt myself. I was going to historical stuff, but well, this is some history as well. And it's about the fact that this Supreme Court has not seen fit to weigh in on the 1 or 2, actually, really important cases that have to do with Donald Trump, who is seeking to become the president again, but who, as we know, is now a convicted felon and faces a whole bunch of other potential trials. His attorneys argued before the Supreme Court that as a former president and as a president, he is essentially immune from the law, which anyone knows is a laughable contention. But the Supreme Court, some of the conservative justices did not laugh when this was put before them, and in fact have sat on their black-robed butts for a long, long time and not bothered hearing it. Now, as I said, this is one of the courts historically with the paltriest number of cases decided. They're just not working as hard as courts used to. Now, I'll take you back. Here's the history, 1974, and that was the Watergate era. And there was a special prosecutor, and there had just been this bombshell information that there were tape recordings of Nixon's conversations with anybody and everybody who was in the Oval Office with him. And the special prosecutor said, whoa, well, I would like those recordings. And we'll send a subpoena over to get them. And Nixon said, as Donald Trump would, I am immune from your measly subpoenas trying to get your hands on my tape recordings. And this ends up in front of the Supreme Court. And the speed with which that court dealt with this extremely important case shows how outrageous our current court's delay is. The justices said, we will hear this case. We will give both the president and the special prosecutor 3 weeks, 21 days to file their briefs. And then once these briefs have been seen, we'll give them another 10 days to respond to the other's arguments. And then we will hold oral arguments, which they did on July 8. And just 2 weeks and 2 days after hearing the oral arguments, that court issued its decision. 2 weeks and 2 days after hearing the oral arguments. When were the oral arguments for this Trump thing? Back in April? It's been a hell of a lot longer than 2 weeks. And that ruling, by the way, in 74 was a unanimous ruling that the president had to respond to this subpoena and turn over the tape recordings. The Chief Justice at the time, by the way, was nominated to the court by Richard Nixon. And there was no thought that that would make him a lackey to Richard Nixon, which he was not. That was Warren Burger. He wrote the unanimous opinion. From the time that the court was involved to the time the decision was handed down, 54 days. And of course, Nixon ultimately resigned from office. 54 days. As of Tuesday of this week, 110 days have passed since this corrupted court agreed to hear the Trump immunity case. And I don't know a lot of people who are expecting a decision to come down today. Because this court has shown when it wants to act quickly, it acts. It does. This is all, in their control. And they have acted quickly in cases that benefit Republican interests. When Trump was denied placement on the primary ballot, for instance, where was that? Arizona, Colorado, I can't remember. Man, this Supreme Court jumped and made sure he got on the ballot. This much broader, bigger case They're sitting on it, which, of course, helps Donald Trump because this will never come to trial if he wins. I don't know what we do with this court. I don't know what we do. Hey, I'm sorry, I'm sort of all over the place today. I gave Willie Mays a short shrift the other day, and I read his obit in the New York Times today, and I mean, wow, wow, really pretty amazing guy. Just listening to some of the superlatives. This from one baseball writer. He had an open manner, friendly, vivacious, irrepressible. Whatever his private insecurities, he projected a feeling that playing ball for its own sake was the most wonderful thing in the world. May's electrifying play and the immensity of his talents made statistics seem lifeless. Nonetheless, his achievements in the record books were extraordinary. Hang on, I'm actually looking for something. See, I'm just screwed up today. So if you go to the stats, he drove in more than 100 runs in 10 different seasons. He scored more than 100 runs in 12 consecutive years. His 7,000 plus putouts as an outfielder rank number one in Major League history. 12 Golden Glove Awards. I mean, just on and on and on and on. And now the Associated Press did a poll of athletes and baseball historians in 1999. And 1999, that group said Mays was second only to Babe Ruth. You know, I don't know. I personally wonder. Joe DiMaggio said of him, Willie Mays is the closest thing to being perfect I have ever seen. A friend of mine who grew up in Pittsburgh wrote me the other day. I don't know that I can find it. And she said this: probably nothing you will read about Willie Mays will mention that his second wife, May Louise Allen, was from Pittsburgh. Now, what's interesting is, since my friend Pat sent me this, and I saw the New York Times obit, there is a picture of Willie and his wife, May, in the New York Times obit. And it didn't say she was from Pittsburgh, so you are the one who's telling us that. She lived in Homewood, and Pat said we were friends until she left Pittsburgh. She says, I think for San Francisco. So yeah, it might well have been. On a visit to San Francisco, I called her home, Pat writes. A grumpy man answered, wanting to know, who is this? I don't know if it was Willie, but I never managed to connect with May. So there you have it. He married May Louise Allen. If you stop and think about it in terms of, we were talking about names the other day and how you got to make sure that the first name and the last name work together. But of course, women end up getting a second shot at a second name because they have to give up their own when they marry. And in this case, May Louise Allen is a better name than May Mays, isn't it? May Mays. Sort of funny or not. Uh, anyway, so there you have it on Willie Mays. Oh, the other thing though that I wanted to say was give him a nod for honesty. I don't think it's braggadocio. I think it's just he answered this question honestly. When he was selected for the Hall of Fame, he was asked to name the best ball player he'd ever seen. And he said, I think I was the best ball player I've ever seen. Now, technically, he couldn't. Can you see yourself playing? You sort of don't have the right perspective to actually see yourself. But he said, I think I was the best player. I feel nobody in the world could do what I could do on a baseball field. And an awful lot of people would say, I, I concur, Willie. Okay, let me see what else I got here. Forgive me. Why do I keep saying? Do I keep saying forgive me? I'm sorry, mea culpa. Beating myself up here. Ay, 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 ay. So, man, Louisiana. I just want to say, not doing yourself proud. Louisiana, it's getting to be when you see some outrageous thing that some state has instituted. Well, generally it's in the South, but it's Florida, Mississippi, or it's Arkansas or Kentucky. Um, but Louisiana, man, it's hard. It's hard to. They 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 had a Democrat as governor up until maybe last year or something. And that guy worked overtime, I think, vetoing a lot of the crap that came out of their legislature. But he's gone now, and in his place is a good Christian Republican who signed the legislation yesterday. I'm sure you've heard this, that requires the display of the Ten Commandments in every single classroom, from kindergarten through colleges. If that classroom is in the state of Louisiana, it has to display the Ten Commandments. When I first heard that, they were talking about displaying the Ten Commandments, I sort of thought, oh, well, like when you walk into the entryway of the school, they'll have a plaque with the Ten Commandments, and you walk by it. But no. I don't. I'm surprised they didn't have it. Where it really get read, they should put it on the inside of all the bathroom stalls, huh? You want people to have to read that thing? That's where it belongs, in the toilet. And I mean, no disrespect to the Ten Commandments. I know it sounded that way. But the specificity of this law is mind blowing to me. They say nowhere in it how big these displays can be, but they do say they have to be bigger, no smaller than 11 by 14 inches. So, in other words, you could have a zealous superintendent or teacher who makes them, 11 by 14 feet, whatever, no smaller than 11 by 14 inches. And the commandments must be the central focus of the poster, and in a large, easily readable font. It must also include, how are you getting this on? What the hell? It will also, you got the 10 Commandments. You got to have also a 3-paragraph statement. Well, geez, 11 by 14 inches ain't going to do this. It's going to have to be bigger. It includes a 3-paragraph statement asserting that the 10 Commandments were a prominent part of American public education for almost 3 centuries. What? This is because the folks that pass these kinds of laws say that the 10 Commandments are not just a religious text, that they are an American historical document. In fact, the governor signed the law, Jeff Landry. He said, if you want to respect the rule of law, you got to start from the original lawgiver, which was Moses. Well, technically, that's not true either. Technically, because Moses was handed, governor, the 10 Commandments. So he was merely a messenger. He was not the lawgiver. That was God who gave it to him, right? I know my Bible. Yeah. Now, just put aside that, here's the thing. The governor also said, and knowing that there'll be lawsuits immediately, the ACLU, the atheists, everybody's going to come at this. And he said, I can't wait to be sued. Well, of course he can't, because he knows he's got a Supreme Court that probably would be on his side, amazingly. Probably be on his side. My God. We've seen others. I still haven't gotten over the fact that this Christian court just 2 years ago sided with that football coach who said he had a constitutional right to pray on the 50-yard line, in the center of the 50-yard line, after his team's games. And, kneeling on the 50-yard line in Christian prayer, surrounded often by his players. This in a public school. And this Supreme Court said, oh, yeah, well, of course that's part of his constitutional right, which my head is still spinning about. Milton, you're so far ahead. Milton says, wait. The original lawgiver was Hammurabi. Well, yeah, Milton, it depends on which, you know, fairy tale you were brought up on. Although Hammurabi was not so much a fairy tale, was he? Mord writes, and on this, I don't think this is true, but it should be. In the fine print of this Louisiana law, Mord says there's going to be an asterisk after thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet, thou shalt not make thyself an idol. Because is that the only? I mean, I'm trying to think of all of them. Um, he's also is gluttony on there, or is that just one of the? No, it isn't. I'm mixing up my. Good God, yeah. If Donald Trump had only gone to a public school that had mandated that he had to sit in classrooms where he saw that he was commanded not to lie, not to cheat, not to covet, not to screw around. But didn't happen. So, I mean, when you look at what Louisiana is up to since they got rid of that Democratic governor with his pesky veto powers, in just one session this year, one special session, Louisiana legislature rolled back a previous overhaul of the criminal justice system. Why, they were gonna treat these prisoners like humans. That ain't gonna happen. They rolled that baby back. And they passed bills, in fact, to lengthen sentences for a whole bunch of crimes. They passed a law that makes it almost impossible to get parole. They passed a law that says 17-year-olds would be prosecuted as adults. And they passed a law allowing methods of execution beyond lethal injection. They also, of course, rather recently put forward a first in the nation measure that designated the abortion pill as a dangerous controlled substance. And they also said, we're going to allow, no, they haven't voted. This is making its way through the august Louisiana legislature. A measure allowing judges to order surgical castration of child sex offenders. Well, I got to tell you, man, I'm glad to see the Christian charity is who are these people that see religion as a basis for cruelty, separation, segregation, execution, incarceration. Make it harder to be paroled. Whatever happened? I mean, did they ever read anything Jesus supposedly said? They know about how important to Christians, I thought, forgiveness was. I don't see punitive being something Jesus was talking about a lot. Man, Man, what unbelievable, just ugliness. Speaking of unbelievable ugliness, but what the hell? Those SOBs spraying paint on Stonehenge. Today is the summer solstice, right? That's the day where, I guess they did this yesterday. This is the day when, Stonehenge, when it lines up. Stonehenge, it's like thousands of years before Jesus was born. Some amazing prehistoric thing. thing. Um, have you ever seen it? I have. I have been there, and it is awesome. And to think of these bastards spray painting orange on Stonehenge. They were, I mean, please explain to me, the protest crowd, how does it benefit your position to outrage everybody? It doesn't pull people to your side. Defacing the Mona Lisa or a Van Gogh or whatever the hell. What? I don't understand. I mean, it's more again, it's this sort of self-involved performance that today's protesters seem to be into. Um, and part of it, I guess, might be that it's hard to get the attention of media in these days. And so you have to up the outrage factor, I guess. I don't know. It's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, not. And speaking of that, protest, a friend sent me um, a column that it is also, I first read it when she sent it to me, but it is in the New York Times today by Pamela Paul, who I'm sure neither extreme likes, because she's just constantly sort of an independent and moderate kind of thinker, which I'm being drawn to more and more. And she writes about how she just can't do the protest stuff. And I just love this thing. She says, I don't care how noble the cause or foolish the cause, when it comes to gathering in large groups and yelling, you can count me out. I tried it once. As a freshman in college, some women I liked were organizing a pro-choice rally. It seemed a decent way to solidify friendships and enjoy using magic markers, but standing on the campus green of our overwhelmingly liberal university brandishing a broken hanger struck me as not only futile, but ridiculous. The only mind that got changed by that protest was mine, about participating in protests. After 40 minutes or so, I left to go to the bathroom. And later, I signed up to escort patients at a local abortion clinic. There are better ways, I realized, to affect change. Right there. Right there. And then she talks about the thing that temperamentally, she's just not, I'm not either. But I did a lot of marches. I felt the pressure too. But yeah, because I'm not much of a joiner or a tribalist, and conformity creeps me out. And then she says, I love this. Nor do I want to be part of a group where people might think I accidentally left my pussy hat at home. When I see a bunch of white kids wearing keffiyehs, I can't help wonder whatever happened to that whole anti-cultural appropriation thing. Whoa! Whoa! There it is. There it is. The same crowd, it is. It's the same damn crowd now wearing their keffiyehs, which is a total appropriation of a culture that is not theirs. And she goes on to say, when someone drones on about solidarity, all I hear is get in line. And she says, when there's no room for dissent from the dissent, there's no room for me. Well, I am so appreciative of her saying this. She says, every time someone at one of those encampments cried out, "Free Palestine!" I'd be tempted to yell, "From Hamas!" And she says, I'd surely then get kicked out of the group that wants to kick other people out. They don't want any troublemakers. They just want to be the troublemakers. She so nails the the inability of these young protesters and some older ones who should certainly know better to see how full of shit they so often are. I think that's it. So I do recommend you read that one. And then back to sort of oh wait, speaking of also wait. Oh damn, there's so many. None of these things are necessarily related. But in the last few minutes of the show, I guess we can be sort of all over the place, mopping up action. This blew me away. What you say? What blew you away? What blew me away was this piece, I think it was in the Washington Post, yeah, that says that the bald eagle is not our national bird. What? But they're right. The fact is, we don't have a national bird. And they point out that some people know that, and some of those people are members of Congress from the state of Minnesota, and they recently introduced legislation to make the bald eagle the national bird of the United States because we never did it. We have a national mammal. Do you know what it is? I mean, stop and think about it. It's a perfect. The bison. We have a national tree. I mean, these are you have to be designated by a congressional act. Yeah, the oak. The national flower is the rose, but we never got around to doing the national bird. We just thought we did because it shows up all the time on the Great Seal of the United States and all of that. And this same piece points out that, this other thing that we learned, which isn't true, is that Ben Franklin thought that the turkey should be the national bird. And that is not true either, which they go into. In fact, God, they send you off on another piece about how Ben Franklin was responsible for the killing of just unbelievable numbers of turkeys. So if he wanted them to be the national, I think once you're the national bird, you're sort of like, can you have Thanksgiving anymore? I think you can't kill the national bird. No, when he was doing his electricity experiments, uh, he like used turkeys to do a lot of his tests. He was electrocuting them left and right. I mean, he wrote a letter in 1750 to a buddy of his, and he wrote of several of the experiments he was doing on turkeys, trying to figure out how much electricity would kill one of them. And he said, Franklin wrote, "A small amount is sufficient to kill a common hen outright. The turkeys, though thrown into violent convulsions, and then lying as dead for some minutes, recover in less than a quarter of an hour. But by adding nearly double, we killed a turkey of about 10 pounds weight, and suppose we could have killed a much larger." So he was, he was killing turkeys left, right, and center. Just saying. So all these things we learned. What the hell? I once wandered into one of the times I witnessed a teacher actually saying something that was sort of doubly untrue. I happened to wander into my kid's kindergarten class, pick him up for some reason, and the teacher was saying, let me get this right. When Abraham Lincoln cut down that cherry tree, and I didn't, I'm sorry, I don't know the rest because I was so taken by the absurdity of what I had just heard. First of all, it was not Abraham Lincoln that cut down the cherry tree, it was George Washington, but it probably wasn't George Washington either. So I'm thinking the teacher got the story, wrong and then wrong again, I think. But these myths, it again, it's must be human nature because we all do it. We do it in our families. The stories we tell that often don't stand up to historical scrutiny, do they? I don't know. I'll never understand humans as long as I live. So, God, I'm glad the Hajj is over. Geez. I mean, I know religion ends up killing a lot of people. It does. But the Hajj, they got to rethink this. It's held in one of the hottest places in the world in the hottest time of the year, involves millions of people having to walk and stand in the blinding desert heat. And this year, the death toll from the Hajj It's not record. It's not a record because there have been thousands killed at other times. They end up being a stampede of some sort or whatever. People go to the Hajj to do what they're supposed to do as a good Muslim, to go to Mecca, do this thing. But they end up, two Arab diplomats told the French news service, France Presse, that 323 people from Egypt alone had died in the last few days at this Hajj, almost all because of the heat. Egypt has not made an official count, but others have. Indonesia says 138 of their citizens who journeyed to Saudi Arabia for the Hajj died. Jordan, I mentioned a Jordan toll of 20-something the other day. That's up to 41. 35 dead from Tunisia. And there are almost 2 million people taking part in this thing. And you know what the temperature was at one point on this Hajj the last few days? 125 degrees. My God. Okay, that's it for me. I don't understand anything anymore. Don't understand a damn thing. Well, swelter in place. That's all I'm going to say to you. Swelter in place. And we'll see. I got a feeling a lot of stuff is going to happen in the next 3.5 days. And we'll have plenty to talk about on Monday. God help us.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.